today's top boxing news. Ow!
Okay, we'll start with this. Fresh on the heels of Marlen Esparza's big win, quote-unquote win, Virginia Fuchs.
From right here in the US of A, she had this to say.
Let me get a fight for the IBF title to get that fight with Marlen Esparza, so I can take the rest of the belts from her. The rivalry was never over. Unbeknownst to most, both Virginia Fuchs and Marlen Esparza came up in the amateurs together.
Alongside Michaela Mayer and Franchon Cruz, Raquel Miller and Clarissa Shields, Tiaria Brown.
Marlen debuted as a professional some years before Virginia. Virginia debuted as a pro last year, fought 2 times last year, and has already seen action once this year. 35 years old. It's a bit up there in age for an unbeaten up-and-comer. She needs to move fast.
I like her.
Virginia Fuchs has my attention. I saw her pro debut on the undercard of her old buddy's fight, her old buddy, Michaela Mayer. She's the goods. She's got what it takes, and she wants to move at an accelerated rate. She's targeting a fight with the IBF champion, Areli Muciño, a Golden Boy Promotions fighter.
Why does she want Areli?
Likely because Marlen Esparza, this division's only unified champion, won't give her the time of day unless she has something to gain, something like another alphabet title, Areli Muciño's alphabet title, presumably. Virginia figures if she can get Areli in the ring and beat her, she can then get Marlen in the ring.
Areli's got more rounds in the bank, a lot more pro experience than both Marlen and Virginia Fuchs. Is Virginia biting off more than she can chew?
She might be at just 3-0, but at 35 years old, she doesn't have much of a choice. She does have to move fast as she can. Now, I don't actually think that she's going to land that fight with Areli Muciño because rumor has it Areli may be going into a fight with Marlen in their very next outing.
They're both Golden Boy Promotions fighters.
And that is the only sensible fight and sensical fight for the both of them, both champions, the last 2 remaining champions in the women's flyweight division where Virginia campaigns. I really like Virginia. I think she can make a splash. But because she doesn't have a major promoter behind her, that's a problem.
My honest opinion is that she's barking up the wrong tree chasing around Marlen Esparza. She needs to get ahead of this thing, get a jump start on a super flyweight campaign, because in all likelihood, if Marlen fights Areli and beats her, and I think she can.
I think she will, and when she does, she'll likely move up from flyweight up to super flyweight. So what Virginia Fuchs should do to corner a fight with her is get a jump start on a super flyweight campaign. See if she can't get one of those super flyweight champions in the ring, of which there are 4.
Marcela Lujan of Argentina holding the IBF title, Ashley Gonzalez of Mexico holding the WBC,
Mizuki Hirata
of Japan holding the WBO, and Clara Lascurat of Argentina holding the WBA for boiling all the way down to flyweight, which I don't imagine is an easy weight for Ginny Fuchs to make. Not at 35 years old. Why not just stop at super flyweight? Wait for Marlen Esparza to move up, because eventually she's going to.
Virginia was in action late last month opposite the ring in Dia Smith, a seasoned fighter, seasoned journeywoman, and a handful. She can fluster you.
It's a really tough opponent for a fighter with just 2 pro bouts, 2 pro fights. Virginia Fuchs only had 2 fights going into that thing, but she secured the W. She was able to beat India Smith. I picked her to win, and she did. Fighter like India Smith with that very awkward come-forward base style, those rapid-fire flurries, and her being such a pint-sized fighter, so small, making for such a small target, very athletic, very bouncy. That's a very difficult fight, especially for a fighter with only 2 pro bouts going into it, but she did it.
Virginia won.
Virginia Fuchs, who hasn't even fought in a 10-rounder yet, but she wants a fight with either Areli Muciño or Marlen Esparza. You've got to crawl before you walk, and walk before you run.
I really wish Matchroom would sign her.
Last fight was on a Matchroom show, the Regis Prograis versus Zorrilla fight.
Yeah.
A few weeks ago.
A few weeks later, she's calling out Marlen. She'd like to get her in the ring. The amateur rivalry between them seems to extend into the pro ranks.
But at this time, Virginia Fuchs is a high-risk, low-reward opponent for Marlen Esparza. Virginia doesn't have anything that Marlen wants, anything that Marlen needs. She doesn't have a belt, and fighting her doesn't get Marlen a big purse, so until something changes, it's not likely to happen.
It's reality.
They've got to get some hustle behind that muscle, behind Virginia Fuchs, who I think has a very high ceiling, all the ability to become a champion at super flyweight and potentially at bantamweight, what I think would be better weights for Virginia. She'd be big down there at flyweight.
Sounds like a hard cut.
Skip that. Just wait for Marlene to move up, get a jump start on a super flyweight campaign.
We'll see if this rivalry between Virginia and Marlene manifests into anything in the pro ranks.
In men's light heavyweight news, Dmitry Bivol is hoping to defend his title in October, what may turn out to be the only fight that he has this year that's gotten off to a rather slow and rough start for the reigning WBA champion.
I'm not going to sugarcoat it. They overplayed their hand.
Dmitry Vadim Kornilov, and it just is what it is. WBA light heavyweight world champion Dmitry Bivol is planning to have his next fight in the month of October, according to the athlete's manager, Vadim Kornilov. The plans for October, the opponent has not yet been determined, said Kornilov to toss. Bivol, 33 years old, has an undefeated record with 21 wins and 11 of them by way of knockout.
I broached this subject in a previous video, and I got a lot of snarky comments, a lot of guys angry that Dmitry didn't get to have it all his way.
I stand by my original position. Dmitry overplayed his hand, demanding that the fight be at 168 instead of 175. Some discrepancies over the financials, the money. You're not in a position.
Some people might have thought he was, but I didn't.
You're not in a position to take a hardline stance with Canelo Alvarez because you didn't have an alternative. You didn't have another fight equal to or greater than in value than that fight. And as a result of taking that hardline stance, you're left out in the cold. You may fight only once this year, and that is as a result of the decisions you made. 2022 was certainly the biggest year in Bivol's career. In May, he pulled off a shocker by outboxing heavily favored Canelo Alvarez over 12 rounds for a unanimous decision win. The outcome marked Canelo's first defeat since suffering a loss to Floyd Mayweather many years ago in 2013. Then in November, Bivol dominated undefeated mandatory challenger Gilberto Zurdo Ramirez over 12 rounds for a wide decision win in Abu Dhabi. For much of 2023, there was talk of a September rematch with Canelo. The two sides were unable to reach an agreement on the financials. And then eventually, Canelo announced his multi-fight deal with the PBC.
It's just the reality of things. You don't have to like it.
They overplayed their hand, and it really is as simple as that. If you were in a position to make any kind of demands, you wouldn't be here now, in this position.
The way you haven't fought yet, we're 7 months into this year, you haven't fought yet, and it looks like you're only going to fight once this entire year.
Whatever fight he has, it doesn't look like it's going to be a fight on the scale of an Alvarez rematch. A rematch he could have had at 175, a weight where most people would have favored him to beat Canelo, beat him again.
They demanded it be at 168. As a result, they costed themselves the fight.
Another potential option is WBC, IBF, WBO champion Artur Beterbiev. However, there are serious issues in making that fight a reality. Issues that didn't all of a sudden just pop up. They've been there. At least for the undisputed championship, Mauricio Suleiman, president of the World Boxing Council, has openly expressed his refusal in sanctioning such a bout. Because the WBC view Bivol as a Russian fighter, the sanctioning body has refused to approve any fights involving boxers from Russia or Belarus until the war between Russia and Ukraine has subsided.
You can tell me that Bivol deserves better. You can tell me that the WBC's stance is ridiculous, expecting us to view Bivol as a Russian fighter and Artur as a Canadian.
When they're both Russian nationals, they're both Russian fighters, you can lambast all the other fighters at or around these weights who aren't calling out Dmitry. They're still calling out Canelo.
They're still focused on fighting Canelo instead of the man that beat him. You can criticize them for that, but the bottom line is the ends have to justify the means.
There are many salient points to be made there, but for Dmitry Bivol and Vadim Kornilov and what was supposed to be the Canelo Alvarez rematch, the ends have to justify the means. Were you really in a position to make demands? And as it stands, it doesn't look like it, because look at where you are now. Look at the position you're in.
Still get the odd guy that wants to argue that Canelo should have this and Canelo should have that. No, Dmitry should have played ball.
It's what he should have did, because look at the position he's in now as a result of not playing ball.
It's great school mentality that some boxing fans have. These altruistic guys.
You'd have to be a fucking idiot to think that things worked out for Dimitri. They didn't.
His only hope now is the hope that maybe Callum can go into Canada, upset the apple cart for an aging fighter, an aging champion, and Artur better beef so that he can then take those belts back to Matchroom, and they can fight for them.
Presumably next year, because I don't think Callum Smith would fight both champions in that succession, from Artur Beterbiev straight into a Dimitri Bivol fight in the fall.
Too soon a turnaround, too difficult to fight. Dimitri means to return in October. Joshua Buatsi and Dan Aziz, they're out.
The number 1 and number 2 guys in the WBA's current ranked standings, ranked at number 3, is Anthony Yarde, who's still coming off that knockout loss to Artur Beterbiev. Rumor has it he might fight former champion Joe Smith, who's ranked at number 4.
There's a little-known light heavyweight named Albert Ramirez from Venezuela, ranked at number 5, but that's hardly a high-profile fight, and the same applies to the number 6 guy, Richard Riviera of the United States.
Who the fuck is that?
Exactly.
Ranked at number 7 is former WBC champion Alexander Vozdik. He's actually expressed an interest in facing Dimitri Bivol for the WBA title. There's really not much in it for Dimitri, but there aren't that many guys pursuing him either, so he might actually have to explore that option. Ranked at number 8 is former super middleweight champion turned light heavyweight contender Gilberto Zurdo Ramirez, but Dimitri beat him already. He beat him last year, and now he's set to move up in weight, take on a cruiserweight in Michiel Cieslak.
Polish guy that Lawrence Okoli fought over a year ago.
You can see it. You can see in plain sight that Dimitri Bivol is running a scarcity of options. Ranked at number 9 is Lyndon Arthur, but I don't think that would do any more for Dimitri's profile than the Craig Richards fight did. Craig Richards, who's ranked at number 10.
Like I said, the ends have to justify the means. If your decisions led you where you are now,
that can only mean that you overplayed your hand. You weren't in any position to make the demands you were making, and now you're paying for it.
Simple as.
Their decisions did not age well, in a nutshell, whether you like it or not. And finally, in men's heavyweight news, Anthony Joshua calls out Tyson Fury for lies. It's been doing my head in for years.
At what was the kickoff press conference for his upcoming rematch with his old buddy, Dillian Whyte, he highlighted some of Tyson Fury's fibs.
Asked by Eddie Hearn why he was taking the risk of Whyte before a potential Wilder bout, Joshua cut him off and brought Tyson Fury into the conversation, saying, "Forget Wilder and them lot. Them lot been doing my head in for so many years. You lot have seen the shenanigans in the heavyweight division. Even with, I'll be real, Fury saying that he was training for Usyk, Sugar Hill came out and said, nah, I'm not training him. What do you mean I'm training him for a heavyweight championship fight?"
We've talked about that. That was right before the fight officially collapsed between Tyson Fury and Alexander Usyk.
That interview with Sugar Hill Stewart, who inadvertently let the cat out of the bag, I believe it was conducted by either Boxing Social or ID Boxing, IFL, one of them.
Right.
You can see all the lies that have been going on, so I don't really waste my time with time wasters. It's only a fight. I just want to fight. Get on with it. I'm going to be 34 this year. Moving on. Just crack on while I'm here. I'm not really wasting my time waiting for people, chasing people. From the day when I started fighting, even from the amateurs, you can see the trajectory I've been on. Ready to get down, ready to put my neck on the line and fight whoever. And it's still like that.
I questioned whether or not there was really a market for a second fight with Dillian Whyte, and as luck would have it, tickets for the fight have already sold out.
Really, anything that Anthony Joshua does, anything he does seems to get a lot of attention, but I did question what the appetite was for this second fight, this rematch, and it appears that some people must have an appetite for it because the tickets have already sold out, addressing Tyson Fury's lies and just the state at the weight, the state of the heavyweight division.
Anthony addressed that himself,
saying the division's messed up. Even the ones that want to step up aren't even fighting each other. I think the division's changed since I've been champion, if I'm honest. It's slowed down a bit.
There's a correlation between Anthony losing his belts and the division slowing down.
Anthony being the real money man of this division, for all his flaws, imperfections, drawbacks, what have you. For all of them, he still commands a larger audience than anyone else in this division, and he regularly satisfied his mandatories. So fights that needed to happen more or less, were still happening, and that many more fighters were able to get their crack at the apple, their crack at the big time.
Carlos Takam was a mandatory, so was Povetkin.
Takam, Povetkin, Pulev, Usyk.
The belts were in circulation, they were in rotation, fights were happening.
But when he lost those belts to Usyk, and he fought him for a second time, lost the second fight, it does feel like the division lost some steam. I don't actually blame Usyk for that. Usyk tried to do the fight with Tyson Fury, and Tyson tried his best to sabotage it, so here we are. Things at heavyweight are a little bit more stagnant.
You can say that again. One of the only two champions at this weight isn't even about to box a boxer. He's about to box an MMA fighter.
Not some worthy contender from the WBC's ranked standings. The WBC who actually held out on crowning a mandatory challenger for Tyson Fury on the premise that Wilder and Ruiz couldn't work things out. There were still other guys in those ranks. You could have picked one of them.
They ordered Wilder and Ruiz to fight each other last year to crown a mandatory challenger for Tyson Fury, the next one, and they couldn't reach a deal.
Instead of going down their rank standings and picking the next two highest available contenders to fight each other to crown a mandatory, the WBC held out on crowning one altogether. More manipulation, more chicanery, more favoritism, and the division itself suffers for it as a result.
Thankfully, Alexander Usyk, the only other champion at this weight, is set to take care of at least one of his mandatory challengers in Daniel Dubois, then presumably another in Filip Hrgovic later on this year.
Or early next year. The show will go on without Tyson Fury, who, if I'm being honest, I don't expect that he will share the ring with Usyk at any point in the near future. I don't.
Not if he's fighting an MMA fighter, and not if that's going to be his only in-the-ring appearance this entire year. I hardly think he's going to move on from that to an Usyk fight.
Because how the fuck is Francis Ngannou preparation for an Usyk fight?
The division's just not bubbling the same way that it was, knowing that there won't be an undisputed title fight. I mean, I think underneath it all, we all know.
We all feel that ship has sailed. Tyson Fury does not want to share the ring with Alexander Usyk, and all he's been doing is trying to disguise that in this era, there will not be an undisputed heavyweight champion.
Does make things less interesting.
The silver lining is, if Anthony Joshua takes care of business with Dillian Whyte, we have the Wilder fight to look forward to later on this year, and
it's a big fight.
Belt to no belt, you can still sell that. Belt to no belt, that's still a big fight. A very big fight.
He's got to do is take care of business with Dillian Whyte in August.
And what it is with Fury, I don't know. Maybe his supporters like being strung along. Maybe those members of the media constantly apologizing for him. Maybe they like being lied to.
The love affair they have with that guy.
That select few, while the rest of us just wish he would go away and retire.